Most people assume their parents would panic after 24 hours of silence. Mine waited exactly 92 days. When the text finally came, it was not to ask if I was dead or alive. They just needed me to sign a piece of paperwork. That was the moment I understood the truth. They did not miss me because they loved me. They only missed me because I had stopped being convenient. My name is Natalie Bennett, and I am 32 years old. If you looked at my personnel file at Vanguard MedLogix, you would see a woman who clocks in at 6 in the morning, manages the logistics of medical supply shipments with 99% accuracy, and clocks out without making a sound. I am reliable. I am invisible. I am the kind of person you trust to handle the details, but forget to invite to the office happy hour. That invisibility was not just a professional skill I had honed over the last decade. It was a survival mechanism I had perfected in the very house where I was raised. It was a Tuesday in late October when the cracks in my reality finally shattered. I had swapped shifts with a coworker, finishing my day at 2 in the afternoon instead of my usual 5. This gave me a rare window of time, a few hours where the house would be empty, or so I thought. I decided to run a little experiment. It was pathetic, really. When I look back on it, I stopped at the grocery store on the way home. I did not just buy my own food, which was the rule. I bought the expensive stuff. I bought the organic almond butter my mother claimed was the only thing that did not upset her stomach. I bought the craft beer my father liked to drink while watching the game but complained was too pricey. I bought the fancy crackers Kelsey, my sister, liked to nibble on when she stopped by to grace us with her presence. I spent $140 of my own money. This was not rent. This was not a utility bill. This was a bribe. I was buying my way into their good graces, hoping that if I walked through the door with bags full of their favorite things, they might look up and actually see me. I pulled into the driveway at 3:15. The house looked exactly as it always did. A 2-story beige colonial with white shutters. The lawn manicured to within an inch of its life. My car, a 10-year-old sedan with a dent in the rear bumper, looked like a blemish on the otherwise perfect driveway. I parked on the street, as was the unspoken rule, to leave the driveway clear for Dad's truck or in case Kelsey visited. I gathered the grocery bags. The plastic handles dug into my palms, cutting off the circulation to my fingers. But I welcomed the pain. It felt grounding. I walked up the driveway, rehearsing what I would say. Hey, got off early, picked up some treats. I wanted to sound casual, breezy. I did not want them to smell the desperation on me. I unlocked the front door quietly. That was another habit. I never slammed doors. I never stomped. I moved through that house like a ghost because I had learned a long time ago that my presence was tolerated, not celebrated. The hallway was cool and dim. The air smelled of lemon polish and the faint, lingering scent of my father's coffee. I kicked off my sneakers and set them neatly on the mat. I was about to call out, to announce I was home, but the silence stopped me. It was not empty silence. It was the heavy, comfortable silence of people who are sharing a space without needing to speak. They were home. Dad's truck was in the garage, which I should have realized. Mom's car was around the back. I walked toward the kitchen, my socks sliding silently on the hardwood floor. I passed the gallery wall, the shrine to the Bennett family history. There was Kelsey at 5, holding a dance trophy. Kelsey at 18, valedictorian. Kelsey at 29, her professional headshot for the boutique marketing firm she worked for. There were photos of me, too, but they were different. I was always in the background, or half out of frame, or the lighting was just a little off. In the family portrait taken last Christmas, Kelsey was in the center, vibrant in red, while I stood on the edge in gray, looking like a distant cousin who had been pulled in at the last minute. I reached the edge of the kitchen doorway. The bags were heavy, the plastic stretching. I could hear the hum of the refrigerator. Then, I heard my father's voice. It was not his angry voice, the one I feared. It was his soft, rumbling voice, the one he used when he was relaxed. "Did you see the price of the venue she wants?" he asked. "It is a lot," my mother replied. I could hear the clink of a spoon against a ceramic mug. She was probably drinking her afternoon tea. But she deserves it. Kelsey has worked so hard this year, and Blake comes from a good family. We have to match their level. I stood there, just out of sight. They were talking about Kelsey's wedding. Again, it had been the only topic of conversation for 6 months. I did not mind that. Kelsey was the golden child. She was the one who lit up the room. She was charming and bubbly and knew exactly what to say to make people feel special. I knew I was different. I was the serious one, the grinder, the one who made things work but did not sparkle. I know, Dad said. There was a pause. I shifted my weight. The grocery bags bumping against my leg. I should have walked in then. I should have made a noise. But something held me back. A sinking feeling in my gut. A primal warning that I was standing on the edge of a cliff. I just hope Natalie does not make a face when we tell her the contribution amount, Mom said. Her voice was light, dismissive. You know how she gets about money. My stomach twisted. I paid $600 a month to live in my childhood bedroom. I bought my own food. I paid my own insurance. I was saving every penny to pay off the student loans that they had co-signed for, but I was solely responsible for paying. I was stingy because I had to be. She will pay it, Dad said confidently. She knows her duty. She is a good kid. Mostly, Mom echoed. Then came the silence again. I should have left. I should have turned around and walked out the front door. But I was frozen. I needed to hear the rest. I needed to know what lay beneath the surface of their tolerance. Sometimes, Dad said, his voice dropping lower, almost wistful. I wish it was just us and Kelsey, you know? The air left my lungs. It was not a violent exit. It just simply vanished, leaving a vacuum in my chest. I stared at the wall in front of me, at the beige paint that I had helped paint 5 years ago. I know what you mean, Mom replied. She did not sound shocked. She did not scold him. She sounded relieved. It would be so much quieter, less heavy. Natalie is just so much work. Even when she does not say anything, she is just there, like a dark cloud in the corner. She complicates things, Dad agreed. With Kelsey, it is easy. It is joy. With Natalie, it is always a negotiation. I feel like I have to walk on eggshells, or she will start moping about how we do not love her enough. God, the drama. Mom sighed. I am too old for the drama. It would be nice to just enjoy our retirement without feeling guilty every time we look at her. Then, they laughed. It was not a cruel, villainous cackle. It was a soft, shared chuckle between a husband and wife who understood each other perfectly. It was the laughter of two people who had finally admitted a dirty little secret and felt lighter for it. I stood there for exactly 3 minutes. I know it was 3 minutes because I watched the second hand tick around the clock on the wall in the hallway. 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes. My hands were screaming. The plastic handles of the grocery bags had cut deep grooves into my palms. My fingers were turning white and blue. Inside the bag, the carton of eggs I had bought for breakfast was pressing against my thigh. I could feel the heat of my own body warming them up. I wish it was just us and Kelsey. She is just there, like a dark cloud. Less drama. The words did not bounce off me. They went straight through, severing whatever tether had been keeping me anchored to this house, to this family. I had spent my entire adult life trying to prove my worth to them. I had stayed home to save money, yes, but also to be close to them, to fix the leaking faucet, to drive Mom to her eye appointments when Dad was busy, to be the safety net. I thought I was a pillar of the family structure, a load-bearing wall, unnoticed, perhaps, but essential, in that hallway, clutching $140 worth of unwanted groceries. I realized I was not a pillar. I was debris. I was clutter. I was an obstacle standing in the way of the perfect, photogenic life they wanted with their perfect, photogenic daughter. I did not cry. That was the strangest part. I expected tears. I expected rage. I expected to burst into the kitchen and scream at them, to list every sacrifice I had made, every check I had written, Every time I had swallowed my pride to keep the peace, but there was nothing. Just a cold, spreading numbness. It started in my fingertips and worked its way up my arms, into my chest, freezing my heart into a solid block of ice. If I walked in there now, they would act normal. Dad would ask how work was. Mom would ask if I remembered to buy milk. They would wear the masks of loving parents, and I would have to wear the mask of the grateful daughter. We would play the game. We would eat dinner. I would wash the dishes. And the whole time, those words would be hanging in the air, invisible and suffocating. I wish it was just us and Kelsey. I could not do it. I could not play the game for one more second. Slowly, carefully, I turned around. I did not make a sound. I walked back down the hallway. Stepping in my own footprints, I reached the front door and opened it, wincing as the hinges gave a faint squeak. I paused, heart hammering against my ribs, waiting for a voice from the kitchen. "Natalie? Is that you?" Nothing. Just the low murmur of the television they had turned on. I stepped out onto the porch and closed the door behind me. The click of the latch was the loudest sound I had ever heard. The afternoon sun was still shining. The birds were still singing. The neighbor was mowing his lawn. The world had not ended, even though mine had just completely collapsed. I looked down at the heavy bags in my hands. The almond butter, the craft beer, the fancy crackers. I did not want them. I did not want anything that belonged to this life. I bent down and set the bags on the welcome mat. I arranged them neatly, side by side. It looked like a delivery from a stranger. I stood up and patted my pockets. I had my car keys. I had my wallet. I had my phone. I looked at the house one last time. It looked different now. It looked like a stranger's house. I realized then that I had never really lived there. I had been squatting in their happiness, a temporary inconvenience they were too polite to evict. Well, they would not have to worry about evicting me anymore. I walked down the driveway, past the manicured lawn, past the mailbox with the family name painted on the side. The Bennetts. It felt like a club I had been rejected from. I got into my car. The engine started with a rattle. I backed out of the spot on the street and drove away. I did not look in the rearview mirror. I knew what I would see. A perfect house, a quiet street, a family that was finally happily, complete without me. I had been driving for about 10 minutes, aimlessly, just following the flow of traffic toward the highway, when my phone buzzed in the cup holder. The screen lit up. It was a notification from the family group chat, the Bennett bunch. I stared at the screen. My heart gave a painful throb, a reflex of hope that I could not kill fast enough. Maybe they had heard the door. Maybe they had seen the groceries. Maybe they were worried. I reached out and tapped the screen. It was a photo, a screenshot of a venue brochure, a rustic barn with chandeliers and overpriced mason jars. Then a text from Mom. "Kelsey just locked in the date at Willow Creek. It is going to be magical. Look at these table settings." Then a thumbs up emoji from Dad. Then a text from Kelsey. "So excited. We need to meet this weekend to discuss the color palette. I am thinking sage green and blush." I waited. I watched the 3 dancing dots that meant someone was typing. Mom again. "Perfect. We will celebrate tonight. Pizza? Kelsey. Yes, love you guys." I watched the screen until it went black. Not a single question. Natalie. "Are you coming?" Natalie. "What do you think of the color?" Natalie. "Are you home yet?" Nothing. I was not just excluded from the conversation. I was not even a factor in the equation. They were planning a celebration, a family night, and it had not even occurred to them to wonder where the 4th member of the family was. Or maybe it had occurred to them, and they just did not care. "I wish it was just us and Kelsey." The words echoed in the small cabin of my car. I gripped the steering wheel. My knuckles were white. The numbness was starting to fade, replaced by a clarity so sharp it cut. They wanted a life without me? They wanted less drama? They wanted to save their energy for the golden child? "Okay," I whispered to the empty car. My voice sounded foreign, scratchy and hard. "Okay." I did not turn the car around. I did not type a reply in the group chat. I did not call to confront them. I drove toward the interstate. The sign for the highway loomed ahead, north to the city, south to nowhere. I hit the blinker and merged onto the ramp heading south. If they wanted me gone, I would give them the best performance of my life. I would not just leave, I would erase myself. I would grant their wish so completely that they would choke on it. I checked the time on the dashboard. It was 4:30 in the afternoon. The clock on my disappearance had officially started. I drove to the bank first. I did not go to the branch near my house, the one where the teller, Mrs. Gable, always asked how my mother was doing with her sciatica. I drove to a branch 3 towns over, a sterile brick building off the highway where nobody knew my name or my history. I withdrew everything. It was not a fortune. It was $3,240. That was the sum total of my life savings after paying rent to my parents, covering my own student loans, and buying groceries that I did not get to eat. I requested it in cash. The teller looked at me with a flicker of suspicion, likely wondering if I was buying drugs or paying a ransom. But I did not care. I took the thick white envelope, shoved it into the bottom of my purse, and walked out. I left my car at a long-term park and ride lot near the interstate. It was paid off, but it was registered to the house address. If they ever decided to look for me, the license plate reader would ping eventually. But by then, I would be gone. I left the keys under the mat. It felt like leaving a dead body behind. I walked a mile to the Greyhound station. The bus to Lakewood Junction cost $42. I bought a one-way ticket. Lakewood Junction is not a destination. It is a place you end up in when you have run out of momentum. It is a grimy industrial city 3 hours west of where I grew up, full of converted lofts and diners that smell like old grease. It was also where Maya Reed lived. Maya was the only person from high school I had kept in touch with, mostly because she was the only one who never asked me why I was so quiet. She was a graphic designer who worked from home and lived in a chaotic, colorful apartment that always smelled like sage and paint thinner. I did not call her. I just showed up at her door at 7 in the evening, carrying a duffel bag and wearing the same clothes I had worn to work that morning. When she opened the door, she did not gasp. She did not ask what happened. She looked at my face, then at the bag, and she stepped aside. "Get inside," she said. "I am making tacos. Eat first." That was Maya. She understood the hierarchy of needs better than anyone. Crisis management could wait. Nutrition could not. I sat on her lumpy velvet couch and ate 3 tacos in silence. I had not realized how hungry I was until the food hit my stomach. My hands were shaking, just a little, a fine tremor that vibrated through my bones. "I need a place to crash," I said finally, staring at a stain on the rug. "Just for a few days, until I figure it out." "The couch is yours," Maya said. She was sketching something on her iPad, not looking at me. "Rent is usually a bottle of wine a week, but I will waive it for the first month." She did not ask about my parents. She did not ask about Kelsey. She gave me a blanket and a pillow, and then she went into her room and closed the door. It was the kindest thing anyone had done for me in years. The next morning, the erasure began. I woke up before the sun. The habit was hardwired into me. I folded the blanket, stacked the pillow, and made the living room look as if no one had slept there. Then I went out. My first stop was a discount electronics store in a strip mall. I bought a cheap smartphone and a prepaid SIM card with a new number. I paid cash. Next, I went to a credit union that had no branches in my hometown. I opened a basic checking account with $2,000 of my cash. I gave them Maya's address, but used a fake apartment number so her mail would not get mixed with mine. Then came the post office. I rented a box for 6 months. This would be my official address for anything that required a paper trail. I sat on a bench outside the post office and held my old phone in my hand. It was a sleek, expensive model, an older hand-me-down from Kelsey when she had upgraded 2 years ago. It felt heavy. Logic dictated that I should smash it, throw it in the river, burn the bridge completely, but I could not do it. Instead, I went into the settings. I turned off location services. I turned off read receipts. I put the phone on silent, disabled all notifications, and buried it deep in the zippered pocket of my duffel bag. It was a test. A sick, masochistic experiment. I needed to know. I needed to see the timestamp on the moment they finally realized I was gone. I needed empirical data to prove that my departure mattered. Even if it only mattered as an inconvenience, the first week was a blur of gray. I did not feel sad. I did not feel angry. I felt anesthetized. I was operating on autopilot, a machine programmed to survive. I downloaded a gig work app on my new phone. I did not want a real job, an office job where people would ask me about my weekend or my family. I wanted labor. I wanted to be a pair of hands, a strong back, a nameless entity. I picked up shifts at a distribution warehouse. I moved boxes for 8 hours a day. Lift, pivot, stack, lift, pivot, stack. The rhythm was hypnotic. My muscles screamed, my feet throbbed, and my skin chafed against the cardboard. But I loved it. The physical pain was loud enough to drown out the noise in my head. I cleaned out a garage for an old lady who watched me with suspicious eyes. I delivered groceries to rich people who did not look me in the face. I assembled furniture for a college student who tipped me $5. I was earning just enough to buy food and contribute a little to Maya's electric bill. I was surviving. Then came the laundry. It was day 9. I had run out of clean socks. I hauled my bag to a laundromat down the street from Maya's apartment. It was a humid, fluorescent-lit place with yellowing linoleum floors and a TV blaring a soap opera in the corner. I loaded my clothes into a washing machine. I went to the vending machine to buy detergent. I usually bought the cheapest powder, the unscented stuff that came in a generic box. But the machine was out of it. The only option left was a small box of a brand called Spring Meadow. I put the coins in. I turned the crank. The box fell with a hollow thud. I opened it and poured the powder into the machine. The smell hit me instantly. It was artificial, floral, and chemically sweet. It was the exact smell of my mother's laundry room. It was the smell of my childhood sheets. It was the smell of the towels I used to fold on Sunday afternoons while she watched cooking shows in the living room. It was the smell of the sweatshirt I had worn when I had the flu, and she had actually made me soup. One of the few times I remembered her touching my forehead with a cool hand. I stood there, gripping the plastic rim of the washing machine. My knees buckled. I slid down to the cold, dirty floor, right there in the middle of the laundromat. I did not just cry, I unraveled. It was a guttural, ugly sound that ripped out of my throat. I pulled my knees to my chest and buried my face in my arms, gasping for air. People were looking. I knew they were looking. I did not care. I was grieving. I was not grieving the parents I had. I was grieving the parents I had wanted. I was grieving the phantom version of my mother who smelled like Spring Meadow and actually loved me. I was grieving the little girl who had tried so hard to be good, to be quiet, to be helpful, thinking that if she just worked hard enough, she would earn her place at the table. That little girl was dead. She had died in the hallway 3 hours away. I sat there for 20 minutes until the cycle finished. Then I stood up, wiped my face on my sleeve, and moved my wet clothes to the dryer. I finished the laundry. I folded everything. I walked back to Maya's apartment. Maya was in the kitchen, eating noodles out of a carton. She took one look at my swollen eyes and blotchy face. "Do you want to talk about it?" she asked. I sat down at the small kitchen table, and for the first time, I told her. I told her about the hallway. I told her about the groceries. I told her exactly what my father had said and how my mother had laughed. I waited for Maya to get angry. I waited for her to call them monsters, to tell me I was better off without them. She did not. She put her chopsticks down and looked at me with a terrifying calmness. "Okay," she said. "Okay?" I asked, my voice raspy. "They want you to be gone," Maya said. She leaned forward, her eyes sharp. "They wished for a life without you. So, let us give it to them. Let us make it the most authentic performance of your life. You do not just leave, Nat. You disappear. For real." Her words settled over me like a heavy blanket. She was right. Leaving was passive. Disappearing was active. It was a choice. That night, I started the notebook. Maya gave me a black leather-bound journal she had never used. "Write it down," she said. "Everything. The money, the plan, the feelings. Get it out of your head so you have room to think." I sat at her kitchen table until 2 in the morning. On the first page, I wrote, "Inventory, assets, cash on hand, $2,100. Skills, logistics, inventory management, driving, furniture assembly, basic carpentry, painting, organization, liabilities, the need for validation, the fear of being a burden, the memory of the hallway." On the second page, I wrote, "Deferred dreams." This was harder. I stared at the blank paper for a long time. What did I want? I had spent so long trying to facilitate what everyone else wanted that I had forgotten I was allowed to have desires. Slowly, I began to write. I like working with my hands. I like the smell of sawdust. I like taking something broken and making it solid again. I wanted to take that woodworking class at the community college, but Dad said it was a waste of money. I wanted to fix up old furniture and sell it. I looked at the words. They looked small and fragile, but they were there. 14 days passed. I had established a routine. Wake up, check the gig app, work, eat, sleep, repeat, every night, before bed. I allowed myself 5 minutes. I would unzip the pocket of the duffel bag, take out the old phone, and turn on the screen. Day 1, nothing. Day 3, nothing. Day 7, nothing. On the 14th day, the screen lit up with a notification. My heart hammered against my ribs. A text from the family group chat. I opened it, my fingers trembling. It was from my Aunt Glenda. It was a picture of a minion holding a wine glass with the caption, "It is wine o'clock somewhere." That was it. No text from Mom asking if I was dead. No text from Dad asking why my car was gone. No text from Kelsey asking why I was not there to help her choose sage green or blush pink napkins. Just a minion meme. The banality of it was more violent than a slap in the face. It meant that the silence in the house was not alarming to them. It was normal. They assumed I was just being moody Natalie, hiding in my room or sulking somewhere. They had not even bothered to check if I was physically present in the home. I stared at the yellow cartoon character for a long time. Then, I laughed. It was a dry, rusty sound. I turned the phone off and put it back in the bag. I pulled the notebook toward me and opened it to a fresh page. I picked up a pen and wrote a single sentence, pressing down so hard the ink bled through to the other side. The deadline. Day 30. If they did not call me by day 30, if no one asked a direct, specific question about my whereabouts or my well-being, then I was done. If they could go a full month without noticing that their daughter had vanished from the face of the earth, then they did not have a daughter anymore. I would treat day 30 as the day the paperwork was signed. I would grant their wish. I would erase Natalie Bennett from their narrative. And I would never, ever write her back in. I closed the book. I turned off the lamp. I lay in the dark, listening to the sirens wailing in the distance of Lakewood Junction, and for the first time in 2 weeks, I fell asleep without dreaming of the hallway. The calendar on the wall of Maya's kitchen became my tormentor. It was a promotional calendar from a local auto body shop, featuring glossy photos of vintage muscle cars. But to me, it was a scoreboard of indifference. I marked the days with a black Sharpie. 1 X for every day I remained invisible. 1 X for every day the world kept spinning without Natalie Bennett in it. The first major blow landed on the 3rd week. It was a Tuesday, typically a banal day, but in the Bennett household, Tuesdays were sometimes designated for impromptu joy, usually dictated by Kelsey's mood. I was sitting on Maya's floor, organizing my new life. I had a system now, cash in one envelope, receipts in another. I was meticulously tracking every cent because poverty in a new city is a beast that bites if you turn your back on it. Maya had left her iPad on the coffee table. She was in the shower. I knew I should not have done it. It was digital self-harm, but the itch was undeniable. I unlocked the iPad. I did not log into my old accounts. That would trip the sensors. But I had created a burner Instagram account named VoidWalker88, just to watch from the shadows. I navigated to my cousin Rachel's profile. Rachel was the family chronicler, the one who documented every sneeze and appetizer. There it was. Posted 2 hours ago, a photo taken at the Oak Room, the steakhouse downtown where entrees started at $45. It was a selfie. But Rachel had a wide angle. In the background, sitting at a round booth, were my parents and Kelsey. They were not looking around anxiously for their missing daughter. They were not huddled in a somber discussion about filing a missing person report. They were laughing. My father had a glass of red wine raised in a toast. His face was flushed with that specific shade of contentment he only got after a good meal and a better financial quarter. My mother was leaning into him, wearing her pearl earrings, the ones she usually saved for Easter. And Kelsey? Kelsey was beaming, holding up a dessert plate with something written in chocolate syrup. The caption read, "Family night with the Bennetts. Celebrating big news. Love you guys." I zoomed in until the pixels blurred. I counted the people in the booth. 1, 2, 3. There was no empty chair. There was no gap where I should have been. They had physically closed the ranks. The space I used to occupy had been filled by their elbows and their handbags. I sat there, freezing in the drafty living room of a stranger's apartment, and I realized that the "I wish it was just us" comment in the hallway was not a fleeting thought. It was a prophecy. They were not pretending to be happy to save face. They were happy. My absence had not created a hole. It had removed an obstruction. Then came the holidays, in America. The period between late November and the 1st of January is designed to weaponize loneliness. If you have a family, it is stressful. If you do not have a family, it is fatal. Thanksgiving arrived with the subtlety of a sledgehammer. Maya went home to her parents in Ohio. She offered to take me, but I refused. I could not stomach the idea of being the pity guest, the stray cat fed scraps at someone else's table. So I stayed in Lakewood Junction. I worked a double shift at the warehouse on Thanksgiving Day because the pay was time and a half. I spent 8 hours loading pallets of flat-screen TVS and air fryers destined for Black Friday sales. My body ached, but the noise of the forklift was better than the silence of the apartment. At 7 in the evening, I took my break. I sat on a concrete curb behind the loading dock, eating a turkey sandwich from a vending machine. It tasted like sodium and preservatives. I turned on my old phone. Just for a minute, no missed calls. No voicemails, no texts. I checked the spam folder. I checked the blocked list, just in case I had accidentally hit a button. Nothing. My mother, the woman who would text me 5 times if I forgot to return a Tupperware container, had not sent a single word on the one day of the year dedicated to gratitude and family. Christmas was worse. The city was draped in lights, and every song on the radio was about coming home. I spent Christmas Day watching a marathon of bad reality television, drinking cheap wine, and waiting. I was not waiting for them to come get me. I knew they would not. I was waiting for the guilt to hit them. I played a scenario in my head. Mom waking up on Christmas morning, looking at the tree, seeing one less pile of gifts, and finally breaking down. Dad picking up the phone, his voice gruff with worry, but the phone stayed black. By New Year's Eve, the silence had shifted. It was no longer a void. It was a physical weight, pressing down on my chest, making it hard to breathe. Day 60 hit me in mid-January. This was the danger zone. Maya had warned me about this. She called it the orphan's doubt. I was walking home from the grocery store, trudging through gray slush. The wind was biting my face. Suddenly, a thought seized me, cold and sharp. Maybe I made it all up. The memory of the hallway began to distort. Had Dad really said he wished it was just Kelsey? Or had he said something else, and my insecure brain twisted it? Maybe they had called, and my phone was broken. Maybe they thought I was on a long business trip. Maybe they were frantically searching for me, but they were doing it quietly to protect my privacy. I stopped on the sidewalk, panic rising in my throat. I was the villain in this story, was I not? I was the dramatic daughter who ran away and ghosted her loving parents because of one overheard sentence. I was punishing them for a misunderstanding. I almost ran back to the apartment to call them. I almost dialed the landline number I had known since I was 4 years old. I wanted to apologize. I wanted to hear my mother's voice, even if she was scolding me. But then I remembered the laundry detergent. I remembered the smell of spring meadow and the way Mom had looked at me when I graduated college. Not with pride, but with relief that I was finally off the payroll. I did not call. I went home and wrote in my journal until my hand cramped. Facts. 1. They have my number. 2. They have my email. 3. They know where I work, or used to. 4. They have not reached out. Conclusion. You are not missing. You are discarded. Then came day 92. It was a Tuesday again, the end of January. The sky was the color of a bruised plum. I was sitting at my laptop, looking for better-paying gigs, when a notification popped up in the corner of my screen. It was an email. My stomach dropped to the floor. It was from the Bennett family Google group. This was the listserv my mother used to coordinate potlucks, reunions, and holiday logistics because she treated family gatherings like military operations. The subject line was, Family check-in / Easter plans / spring cleaning. My hands shook so hard I could barely click the mouse. This was it. This was the moment. They were finally breaking the silence. They were going to ask where I was. They were going to beg me to come back. I opened the email. Hi everyone. Hope you are all staying warm. Can you believe it is almost February? We are starting to look at dates for the Easter gathering this year. Uncle Jerry, please let us know if the lake house is available or if we should host. Also, Dad and I are doing a big spring clean of the garage next weekend. If anyone has boxes stored there, please come get them or we are donating them to Goodwill. Kelsey, remember we have the cake tasting on Saturday at 10. Do not be late. I scanned the text, my eyes frantically searching for my name. I read past the recipes for glazed ham. I read past the gossip about Cousin Mike's new girlfriend. And then, at the very bottom, below the sign-off, there was a single line, Natalie, if you are free, let us know. That was it. No question mark. No, how are you? No, we have not seen you in 3 months. No, are you alive? If you are free, as if I was just a neighbor who was occasionally busy. As if my absence was a minor scheduling conflict, not a disappearance. They were not worried about my safety. They were worried about the head count for the ham. I stared at the screen. I felt something inside me snap. It was not a loud snap. It was the quiet sound of a tether finally breaking under too much tension. For 92 days, a small, stupid part of me had been holding on to a life raft of hope. I had hoped they were suffering. I had hoped they were worried. I had hoped they loved me enough to miss me. This email was the needle that popped the raft. They did not miss me. To miss someone, you have to value their presence. To them. I was just an appliance that had been unplugged. I sat back in my chair. The tears I expected did not come. Instead, a cold, crystalline clarity washed over me. It was freezing, but it was pure. I was not a daughter. I was an option. Then, my phone buzzed. The new one. I frowned. Nobody had this number except Maya and a few gig employers. But when I looked, it was a text from an unknown number. The area code was my hometown. I opened it. Natalie. Stop being dramatic. Come home. Mom is sad. It was Kelsey. Of course. She must have found my number through some mutual contact. Or maybe she had seen my resume on a job board. She worked in marketing. She knew how to find people. I stared at the message. Stop being dramatic. That was the headline of my life in their eyes. My pain was drama. My silence was a tantrum. My disappearance was a performance inconvenience. Mom is sad. Not Mom is worried. Not Mom is scared. Mom is sad. Sad like she is sad when it rains on her garden party. Sad because the family picture is asymmetrical. And still, even in this direct text, The golden child did not ask the one thing that matters. She did not ask, "Are you okay?" She did not ask, "Where are you?" She did not ask, "Why did you leave?" She just ordered me to return to my assigned position because my absence was bringing down the vibe. I looked at the phone. I looked at the email. "No," I said aloud. Maya walked in at that moment, carrying a bag of takeout. She saw my face and stopped. "What happened?" "They emailed," I said, my voice steady. "And Kelsey texted." "And?" "They want to know if I am free for Easter, and Kelsey thinks I am being dramatic." Maya dropped the bag on the table. "You are kidding." "I wish I was." I stood up. I felt taller. The hunch that had defined my posture for years, the hunch of a person trying to take up less space, was gone. "I am not going to answer," I said. "Good," Maya said, "but I am not going to hide anymore either." I continued. I walked over to the wall and ripped the calendar down. The paper tore with a satisfying sound. "They want to pretend I do not exist until they need a signature or a seat filler? Fine. They want to erase me from the story?" I walked to the window and looked out at the gritty skyline of Lakewood Junction. The sun was setting, casting long, sharp shadows across the brick buildings. "If they want to write me out," I said, turning back to Maya, "then I am going to write a new chapter. And I am going to write it in bold font, all caps, right across their faces. They will not be able to skip this part." "What are you going to do?" Maya asked, a slow grin spreading across her face. I thought about the email. Spring cleaning, Goodwill. They were threatening to throw away my things. They were threatening to overwrite my history. "I am going to become the one thing they cannot ignore," I said. "I am going to become successful, and I am going to make sure they see it. But before I could launch my grand plan of success, I needed to make sure they could never, ever pull me back into the dark." "Maya," I said, "do you still know that guy who works in credit repair? The one who told you about the fraud alerts?" Maya nodded slowly. "Yeah, why?" "Because," I said, looking at the "if you are free" line one last time, "I have a feeling that while I was busy crying over them, they were busy doing something else with my name. You do not ask a missing person if they are free unless you need them to sign something." I sat back down at the computer. I was done waiting. The mourning period was over. The investigation was about to begin. The fluorescent lights of the Lakewood Junction branch of First National Bank hummed with a sound that seemed to drill directly into my molars. I sat in a gray fabric chair that smelled faintly of industrial carpet cleaner, clutching my handbag as if it contained state secrets. In a way, it did. It contained my new identity. I was there to open a secured credit card. It was a humbling step for a 32-year-old woman who had never missed a payment in her life. But my disappearance had required a scorched earth policy with my old finances. I needed to build a new credit history at this new address, unconnected to the life I had left behind 3 hours east. The personal banker, a man named Mr. Henderson, who wore a tie that was slightly too wide for the current decade, typed furiously on his keyboard. He had a kind face, the sort of face that suggested he coached Little League on weekends. "All right, Ms. Bennett," he said, hitting the enter key with a flourish. "We have the checking account set up. Now, since you are looking to rent an apartment soon, I would strongly suggest we take a look at your current credit report, just to see where you stand. Sometimes, if the score is high enough, we can bypass the secured card and get you a standard rewards card with a lower interest rate." I hesitated. My credit had always been pristine. I was the girl who paid off her balance in full every Friday, but I had been off the grid for 92 days. "Sure," I said. "Let's look." "Mr." Henderson clicked a few more times. He hummed a tuneless melody. Then, the humming stopped. He leaned forward, squinting at the screen. He adjusted his glasses. Then he looked at me, and the friendly Little League coach expression was gone, replaced by the guarded look of a man who suspects he is being played. "Ms. Bennett," he said, his voice dropping a decibel. You said you haven't opened any new lines of credit in the last 6 months. Is that correct? That is correct, I said. My heart gave a singular, hard thump against my ribs. Well, he turned the monitor slightly so I could see. According to this, you opened a Platinum Rewards line with a limit of $20,000 exactly 42 days ago. The air in the cubicle seemed to vanish. I stared at the screen. There it was, a line item glowing in high-definition reality. Status, open, balance, $4,850. Date opened, December 18th. December 18th. I remembered that day. I had spent it shivering in the warehouse, unloading crates of frozen turkeys for the Christmas rush, earning $15 an hour. I did not open that, I said. My voice sounded hollow, like it was coming from inside a tunnel. Mr. Henderson frowned. It is listed under your Social Security number. The address. He clicked a tab to expand the details. The billing address is listed as... He read out the address. My parents' address. The house with the white shutters. The house where I had stood in the hallway and listened to them wish me away. I felt a wave of nausea so violent I had to grip the edge of the desk to keep from sliding off the chair. And, Mr. Henderson continued, reading further down the screen, there is an authorized user on the account, initials K, B, Kelsey Bennett. The puzzle pieces did not just fall into place. They slammed together with the force of a car crash. The silence, the lack of worry, the casual email, the text about Mom being sad. They were not silent because they were grieving. They were silent because they were busy spending. Miss Bennett? Mr. Henderson asked. Do you know who KB is? I looked at him. I could have lied. I could have said it was a mistake. But the rage that was rising in my throat was too large to swallow. Yes, I said. That is my sister. I see. He pulled the monitor back. Well, this complicates things. With a utilization rate this high on a new account. And, looks like a missed payment fee was posted yesterday. Your score has taken a significant hit. I cannot offer you the unsecured card. Print it, I said. Excuse me? Print the report. Full details. Transaction history if you can see it. Mr. Henderson saw something in my eyes that made him decide not to argue. He hit print. I walked out of the bank 10 minutes later with a stack of warm paper in my hand. I did not go back to the warehouse. I went straight to Maya's apartment. I spread the papers out on her kitchen table like a war map. I went through the transactions one by one. December 20th, $800. The bridal loft. December 22nd, $1,200. Lux Catering deposit. January 5th, $300. Sephora. January 10th, $2,500. Vintage furniture rentals. They were funding Kelsey's wedding. They were funding the golden child's perfect day using the credit of the daughter they wished didn't exist. It was brilliant. In a sick, twisted way. They knew I had good credit. They knew I was gone. Maybe they even told themselves I was never coming back. So it wouldn't matter. Or maybe they just assumed that if I did come back, I would be too passive, too desperate for their love, to do anything about it. I would just absorb the debt like I absorbed their insults. It's for your sister, they would say. Don't be selfish. Maya walked in the door at 5:30. She saw me sitting at the table, the papers arranged in a grid. She saw my face. She dropped her keys on the counter. Who died? My credit score, I said. I pushed the paper toward her. Look at the authorized user. Maya read it. She looked at the transactions. She looked at the dates. Her eyes went wide. They stole your identity, she whispered. Your own parents? And Kelsey, I added. She is the authorized user. She is the one signing for the catering. She knows. She has to know. This is a felony, Nat, Maya said. This isn't family drama. This is federal crime. I know. What are you going to do? I looked at the transaction from Vintage Furniture Rentals. $2,500. That was more than I had lived on for the last 2 months combined. I am going to make a phone call, I said. I picked up my phone. I did not call my parents. I did not call Kelsey to scream at her. That is what the old Natalie would have done. The old Natalie would have begged for an explanation. The new Natalie dialed the fraud department of the credit card issuer. The process was clinically detached. I navigated the automated menu. Press 1 for English. Press 3 to report fraud. When a human finally answered, a woman named Patricia with a tired voice, I was ready. I need to report an account opened fraudulently in my name, I said. Okay, ma'am. Can you verify your social? I gave her the numbers. And you are saying you did not open this account ending in 4498? I did not. I have not lived at the registered address for 92 days. I have no knowledge of these charges. All right, Patricia said. I am placing a freeze on the account immediately. No further charges will be authorized. We will open an investigation. We will send an affidavit of fraud to your new address. You will need to sign it and return it with a copy of your police report. Police report? I asked. Yes, ma'am. For amounts over $500, we require a police report to discharge the debt. I closed my eyes. A police report meant naming names. It meant criminal charges. Wait, I said. Patricia, do you have the original application on file? The one that was signed? I can pull up the digital image, she said. One moment, I heard clicking. Yes, here it is. Electronic signature. It was signed via a tablet device. Can you email that to me? Just for my records, so I can see what was submitted? I can send you the dispute packet, which includes the application copy, she said. It will be in your inbox in 5 minutes. I hung up. I waited. When the email arrived, I opened the attachment. I zoomed in on the signature box at the bottom of the application. My blood ran cold. It was my signature, not just a scribble. It was my signature. The specific way I looped the N, the sharp cross on the T, the way the B in Bennett leaned slightly to the right. It was almost perfect, but it was not quite right. The pressure points were wrong. The pen stroke was a little too hesitant on the curve of the A. Someone had practiced. I sat there, staring at the screen, feeling a horror that was deeper than the time I heard them in the hallway. In the hallway, they had simply dismissed me. That was painful. But it was passive. This was active. This meant that one night, sitting at the kitchen table, my mother or my sister had taken out old birthday cards I had written, or maybe checks I had signed for rent, and they had practiced becoming me. They had sat there, laughing, drinking wine, and learning how to forge my name so they could buy centerpieces for a party I wasn't invited to. They had not just erased me. They had skinned me and were wearing my financial life like a costume. Maya leaned over my shoulder. She saw the signature. She inhaled sharply. That is terrifying, she said. They practiced, I said, my voice barely a whisper. They practiced being me. Maya pulled out a chair and sat opposite me. She reached across the table and put her hand on top of my clenched fist. Natalie, she said, listen to me closely. They did not forget you. You thought they forgot you because they didn't call. But they didn't forget. She tapped the paper with the fraudulent charges. They only remember you when they need you. You are not a person to them. You are a resource. You are a signature. You are a credit score. The truth of her words settled into my bones. It was a heavy, ugly truth, but it was solid. I could stand on it. If I file the police report, I said, Kelsey gets arrested, or Mom does. And if you don't? Maya asked. You pay $5,000, you ruin your credit for 7 years, and they learn that they can use you whenever they want. I looked at the fake signature again. It looked like a ghost. I thought about the text Kelsey had sent. Mom is sad. Mom wasn't sad. Mom was terrified that the bill was coming due and she needed me to come home and silently absorb the cost. Just like I had absorbed the emotional cost of their neglect for 32 years. I am not going to pay it, I said, but I'm not going to call the police. Not yet. Why not? Because, I said, a plan forming in the back of my mind, cold, sharp, and precise. The police is too messy. It gives them a chance to play the victim, to cry to the neighbors about their ungrateful daughter who sent them to jail. I looked at the charge for vintage furniture rentals. $2,500. They used my name to buy things for the wedding, I said. They want the name Bennett to be associated with class and elegance. I stood up and went to the window. Below, the streetlights of Lakewood Junction were flickering on. I am going to give them exactly what they want, I said. They want my name at that wedding? They are going to get it, but not on a check. I turned back to Maya. I need to register an LLC, I said. And I need to build a website, tonight. For what? For the business I'm about to start, I said. If they are going to steal my identity, I am going to reclaim it, and I am going to make sure that the next time they see my name, it is not on a credit card statement they can hide in a drawer. It is going to be on something they have to look at in front of 200 guests. I picked up the phone again. Patricia? I said. Knowing I would get a different agent but not caring, I want to proceed with the fraud claim, but I want to add a note to the file. I am initiating a dispute, but I want the merchant investigation to run its full course. I want the vendor to know exactly who signed for those rentals. I hung up. The tears were gone. The grief was gone. All that was left was the cold, hard procedural realism of a woman who was done being a victim. I pulled my laptop toward me. I opened a new tab. I typed in the Secretary of State's website for business registration. I needed a name, something that sounded like it belonged in a high-end wedding, but meant something entirely different to me. I thought about the hallway. I thought about the emptiness I had felt for 92 days. I thought about the wood I wanted to carve. I typed, Hollow Pine Studio. It sounded rustic, chic, expensive, but to me, it meant a pine box, a coffin for the relationship that had died today. I hit submit. The processing fee was $50. I paid it with my own debit card, the one with the money I had earned sweating in a warehouse. They want to use my name? I whispered to the empty room. Fine, let's see how much they like it when I am the one holding the pen. The adrenaline of rage is a potent fuel, but it burns dirty and it burns fast. After the incident at the bank, after the discovery of the credit card fraud and the impulsive registration of the LLC, I did not immediately rise like a phoenix. I crashed. The anger that had propelled me through the filing of the fraud report evaporated, leaving behind a heavy, silt-like depression. I stopped checking the gig app. I ignored the notifications for warehouse shifts. For 3 days, I lay on Maya's couch, staring at a water stain on the ceiling that looked vaguely like the state of Florida. The voice in my head, the one my parents had cultivated for 3 decades, began to whisper, maybe you are the problem. Maybe you deserve to have your identity stolen. Maybe you are so forgettable that they honestly thought you wouldn't mind. I fell into a pit of self-gaslighting. I convinced myself that filing the dispute was an act of betrayal. I imagined my mother crying in the kitchen, holding the letter from the bank, wondering why her daughter hated her. I forgot the hallway. I forgot the laughter. I only remembered the guilt of being an inconvenience. I was sliding back into the role of the dutiful, silent victim. It was comfortable there. It was familiar. It required nothing of me but submission. On the morning of the 4th day of my slump, Maya walked into the living room. She was holding a cup of coffee and a spiral-bound notebook. She did not ask how I was feeling. She did not offer sympathy. She kicked the edge of the couch, right near my shin. "Get up," she said. I groaned and pulled the blanket over my head. "Leave me alone." "No," Maya said. She ripped the blanket off. "I am not charging you rent, Natalie, but the cost of staying here is that you do not get to rot. You filed for an LLC. You started a war. You do not get to take a nap on the battlefield." She dropped the notebook onto my chest. It hit with a solid thud. "Write," she ordered. "Write what?" I asked, squinting against the morning light. "Write down what you can do," she said. "And I do not mean data entry or logistics management or being a doormat for narcissists. Write down the things you can do with your hands, The things that make you feel like a human being and not a ghost. She walked into the kitchen to start her workday, leaving me with the blank page. I sat up. I looked at the paper. Things I can do. My mind went blank. My resume was a list of administrative skills designed to make me invisible and efficient. What did I actually know how to do? Then, a smell hit me. It wasn't real. Just a phantom sensory memory triggered by the question. It was the smell of cedar shavings and turpentine. I closed my eyes and I was 12 years old again. I was not in my parents' sterile, beige house. I was in my grandfather's garage. Grandpa Bennett had been the black sheep of the family, a man who worked with his hands, who drank cheap beer, who laughed loud and died poor. My father looked down on him, but I had loved him. He was the only person who never looked through me. When I was in his shop, I was not Kelsey's sister. I was his apprentice. Hand me the 3/8 wrench. Nat. Sand with the grain. Never against it. If you rush the varnish, you ruin the wood. Patience is a tool. I picked up the pen. My hand felt steady for the first time in days. I can strip paint. I can sand wood until it feels like silk. I can mix stain to match a 60-year-old grain. I can fix a wobbly leg. I can look at a piece of trash and see the furniture hidden inside it. I looked at the list. It was short, but it was solid. It was real. It was mine. I need to go to the thrift store, I called out to Maya. She popped her head out of the kitchen. Do you need a ride? No, I said, standing up and feeling the blood rush back into my legs. I need to walk. I need to carry something heavy. I walked 6 blocks to a Goodwill that smelled of dust and old detergent. I went straight to the furniture section in the back. It was a graveyard of particle board and scratched laminate, but in the corner, buried under a pile of hideous floral cushions, I saw it. It was a small console table. One leg was cracked. The surface was covered in layers of peeling white paint that looked like a skin disease. Someone had let a child draw on it with permanent marker. It was ugly. It was broken. It was discarded. It was perfect. I bought it for $15. I carried it the 6 blocks back to the apartment, the weight of it digging into my shoulder, grounding me. I set it up on the small balcony of Maya's apartment. I laid down a tarp. I put on a mask. I took the sander I had borrowed from Maya's toolbox. She was an artist. She had everything. And I turned it on. The vibration of the machine ran up my arm and into my teeth. It was a violent, aggressive hum. I touched the sandpaper to the wood. The white paint flew up in a cloud of dust. For the next 6 hours, I did not think about my mother. I did not think about the credit card fraud. I did not think about Kelsey's wedding. I thought about the wood. As I stripped away the layers of cheap paint, I found the truth underneath. It was oak, solid, red oak. It had been suffocated under layers of trends, white paint for the farmhouse look, maybe a varnish before that, but the core was still there. It was damaged, yes. There were water rings and scratches, but it was strong. I realized then why I had named the LLC Hollow Pine. It wasn't just about the pine box. It was about the idea that something can be hollowed out by neglect, by abuse, by time, and still be beautiful. You can fill the hollows. You can sand down the scars until they become part of the grain. I spent the next 2 days working on that table. I fixed the leg with wood glue and a clamp. I sanded the surface until my fingertips were raw. I applied a dark walnut stain that made the grain pop like a map of a new world. I sealed it with 3 coats of polyurethane. I documented the whole process. I set up my cheap phone on a stack of books and filmed the sanding, the staining, the reveal. I edited it into a 30-second clip. No music, just the sound of the sander and the quiet swish of the brush. I posted it to a new Instagram account linked to the business. Hollow Pine Studio. I captioned it. Found in the trash. Restored to dignity. Solid oak console table. $200. I hit post. I expected nothing. The internet is a void. Much like my family. 48 hours later, my phone buzzed. It was a DM from a woman named Sarah. Is this still available? I have been looking for something exactly like this for my entryway. It is beautiful. I stared at the word. Beautiful. Nobody had ever called anything I did beautiful. They called it adequate. They called it done. Yes, I typed back. It is available. She came to pick it up that evening. She was a young professional, maybe my age. She ran her hand over the smooth surface of the table. You have a real eye, she said, handing me $200 in cash. You can tell you put a lot of love into this. I held the money in my hand. It was $20 bills. They felt heavier than the thousands I had stolen from my own savings. Thank you, I said, and for the first time in 92 days. My voice did not shake. That sale was the spark. The fuel was no longer rage. It was competence. I went back to the thrift store. I bought a set of chairs. I bought a coffee table with a cigarette burn. I bought a bookshelf that leaned to the left. I fixed them all. I filmed it all. I started posting daily. I showed the ugly before. I showed the messy during. I showed the pristine after. I wrote captions that were honest. Some damage goes deep. But you can sand it out. Stability is more important than finish. Don't paint over the truth. People started to follow. It wasn't millions. It was a few hundred, then 1,000. They were people who liked the quiet, methodical nature of the videos. They were people who liked seeing broken things become whole. I got more orders. A local coffee shop asked if I could refinish their counter. A photography studio wanted a rustic bench for newborn shoots. I was working 18 hours a day. My hands were permanently stained with walnut ink. My back ached. I was exhausted. And I was happy. I was standing straight. I walked down the street and I didn't look at the ground. I had built something. It was small. It was dusty. And it was mine. I didn't need my father's approval to know a joint was tight. I didn't need my mother's permission to know a finish was smooth. The wood told me the truth. One Tuesday afternoon, it was always Tuesdays, I received an email through the contact form on my new website. The subject line was, Inquiry for Custom Centerpiece/Event Styling. I wiped my hands on my apron and sat down to read it. Hi, Natalie. I came across your work on Instagram via a friend. I love the raw but refined aesthetic of your pieces. I am the venue manager for a location in Seabrook Cove, and we have a high-profile client coming up who is very specific about their decor. They want a custom ceremony table, something that looks vintage but feels modern. It needs to be a statement piece for the Unity Candle ceremony. The bride is looking for something with soul. We are on a tight timeline. The event is in 3 weeks. Is this something you could commission? Best, Elena Rodriguez. Events Director, The Harbor View at Seabrook Cove. I froze. Seabrook Cove. I knew that name. I had seen it on a brochure. I had seen it in a screenshot in the family group chat. Back when I was still lurking. Back before I cut the cord. I opened a new tab. I searched the Harbor View at Seabrook Cove. The website loaded. It was stunning. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the ocean. Chandeliers. And there, on the upcoming events calendar, which was public for vendors, was the date. April 18th. Bennett. Harrison wedding. It was Kelsey's venue. It was the place where my sister was going to marry Blake. The place my parents were paying for with the credit card they had opened in my name. The irony was so sharp it almost drew blood. They were stealing my financial identity to pay for the venue. And now, the venue was reaching out to my new identity to build the centerpiece. The universe was not just winking at me. It was handing me a sledgehammer. I looked at the email. The bride is looking for something with soul. Kelsey didn't want soul. Kelsey wanted the appearance of soul. She wanted the aesthetic of depth without the inconvenience of actual trauma. She wanted a table that looked like it had a story. As long as that story didn't overshadow her dress, I could have said no. I could have deleted the email. I could have run away from the collision course, but I looked at the console table I was working on. I looked at the scar in the wood that I had filled with gold resin, turning a flaw into a feature. I wasn't the girl in the hallway anymore. I wasn't the ghost. I was the owner of Hollow Pine Studio. I hit reply. Hi, Elena. I am available. I would love to create something with soul for this event. Let's talk details. I sent the email. My heart was beating a steady, heavy rhythm. It wasn't fear, it was the slow, deliberate pulse of a predator who has just realized they are no longer the prey. They wanted a centerpiece? I would give them a centerpiece. I would build a table so beautiful, so undeniable, that it would stand in the middle of their perfect day as a physical testament to everything they had tried to throw away. I picked up my sander. The noise filled the room, drowning out the last lingering whispers of the doubt I had felt 4 days ago. I had work to do. The notification sound on my laptop had become the heartbeat of my new life. In the silent, dust-mote-filled air of Maya's apartment, which I had slowly converted into a makeshift administrative office, that ping meant validation. It meant I was real. It meant Natalie Bennett existed, not as a daughter, but as a vendor. It was 10 o'clock on a Wednesday morning when the specific inquiry arrived. I had just finished sanding a set of reclaimed oak chairs for a coffee shop downtown, my hands vibrating with the phantom sensation of the orbital sander. I wiped the sawdust from my fingers and sat down at the kitchen table. I opened the inbox for Hollow Pine Studio. The subject line was simple. Inquiry. Guestbook table and keepsake box. April wedding. I frowned. October? The venue manager, Elena, had mentioned the Bennett Harrison wedding was in April. This must be a different client. I clicked open the email. Expecting a stranger, I read the sender's name. From Blake Harrison. My breath hitched in my throat. It was him, the groom, the man who was about to marry my sister. The man I had met exactly 3 times in the 2 years they had been dating because Kelsey liked to keep her worlds separate. She had work friends, party friends, and family, and she rarely let them cross-pollinate. Blake had always seemed nice, if a bit generic, a man who wore boat shoes and asked polite questions about the weather. I read the body of the email. Hi there. I hope this email finds you well. Elena at the Harbor View recommended you highly. She said you are doing the ceremony centerpiece for our wedding in April. But I wanted to reach out personally about a side project I want to surprise my fiancé with. I have been looking for a local maker who can create something specific. Kelsey has been so stressed about the details, and I want to gift her something that grounds us. I am looking for a custom guestbook table and a matching wooden keepsake box. We want something that feels like real family, not the glossy, rental stuff. Something that feels like it has roots. Your portfolio is incredible. The way you handle the wood feels very honest. Would you be open to a commission like this? And do you do engravings? Best, Blake. I stared at the screen. The cursor blinked at me. A rhythmic pulse of irony. We want something that feels like real family. The words tasted like aluminum in my mouth. Blake Harrison was asking me, the sister who had been surgically removed from the family portrait, to build him a monument to real family. He wanted roots. He wanted honesty. He had no idea that the local maker he was emailing was the ghost haunting his guest list. He did not know I was missing. Kelsey had likely told him I was busy, or traveling, or simply being Natalie, which in their lexicon meant being difficult and distant. He had no clue that the woman he was emailing was currently staring at a fraud report involving his future wife. I could have ignored it. I could have told him I was booked. But then I looked at the phrase again. Something that feels like it has roots. If he wanted roots, I would give him roots. Roots are not just the pretty things that hold a tree up. Roots are dirty. They twist in the dark. They strangle rocks. They fight for water. I hit reply. I did not type. Hello, Blake. It is me. Natalie. I typed. Hi, Blake. Thank you for reaching out. I would be honored to create these pieces for you. I believe that furniture should tell the truth of the materials. So I understand your desire for something grounded. I have some availability in my schedule to complete this before the April date. For a project of this nature, I would recommend American Black Walnut. It is durable, dark, and ages beautifully. We can certainly discuss engraving options. Attached is my standard rate sheet and a preliminary contract. Let me know if the timeline works for you. Best, N. Bennett owner. Hollow Pine Studio. I signed it N. Bennett. It was a risk, but a calculated one. Bennett is a common name, and even if he saw it, would he connect the local maker with the estranged sister-in-law? People see what they expect to see. He expected a stranger. He expected a vendor. I pressed send. The response came back within 20 minutes. N. This sounds perfect. Walnut is exactly what I was picturing. Let's move forward. Kelsey is going to lose her mind when she sees this. She is all about legacy right now. I almost laughed aloud in the empty apartment. Kelsey was about legacy? Kelsey was about optics. But I kept my professional mask firmly in place. Great, I replied. I will send over the deposit invoice. Once 50% is paid, I will start sourcing the wood. I generated the invoice. I typed in the amount, $850. It was a fair price for custom walnut work. Labor-intensive and precise. I sent it through the secure payment portal. Then, I waited. I told myself I was doing this for the money. I told myself I was doing this because I was a professional business owner and I did not turn down legitimate clients. But that was a lie. I was doing this because I wanted to see if I could interact with them, take their money, and build their furniture without crumbling into the insecure mess I used to be. I wanted to prove to myself that I could step into their world on my own terms. I wasn't the little sister waiting for a scrap of attention anymore. I was the expert they needed to hire. 2 hours later, my phone buzzed with a payment notification. Payment received. $850. I opened the transaction details to log it into my accounting software. I needed to send a receipt. I looked at the billing information. My blood ran cold, then hot, then cold again. The cardholder name was Martha Bennett. The billing address was my parents' house, and the email address for the receipt was marthabennett55@gmail.com. Of course, Blake wasn't paying for this surprise gift. My mother was. My mother, who had complained about the price of my college textbooks, was bankrolling a surprise gift for her favorite daughter, purchased from the forgotten daughter. The layers of deception were becoming almost architectural. Kelsey was using my credit to pay for the venue. Mom was using her credit, or maybe Dad's, to pay for Blake's gift. And Blake was unknowingly hiring me to build it. It was a circle of consumption. They were consuming each other, and they were consuming me. But this time, I was sending an invoice for it. I stared at my mother's email address. If I sent the automated receipt, it would land in her inbox. Receipt from Holopine Studio. Would she recognize the name? I had registered the LLC publicly. If she Googled it, my name would come up. But my mother was not a detective. She was a woman who skimmed headlines and looked at pictures. To her, Holopine would just sound like another trendy vendor Blake had found. She would see the amount, sigh about how expensive weddings were, and file it away. She wouldn't look closer. She never looked closer at anything involving me. I sent the receipt. Then, I went to the lumber yard. I selected the wood with the focus of a surgeon. I chose a slab of walnut that was heavy, dark, and knotted. It had a beautiful, chaotic grain pattern that looked like storm clouds. I brought it back to the small workshop space I had rented, a corner of a shared industrial garage that smelled of diesel and sawdust. It wasn't much, but it was mine. I began to cut. For the next 2 weeks, I worked on Blake's order. I built the table first. It was sleek, modern, with tapered legs and a surface smooth enough to slide a glass across. Then I started on the box, the keepsake box, the place where they would store their memories. I designed it to be heavy. I used dovetail joints, exposing the craftsmanship. It was solid, unbreakable, but I added a feature that Blake had not asked for. I built a false bottom. It was a classic woodworking trick, a shallow compartment underneath the main storage area, accessible only if you knew exactly where to press on the decorative trim. It was invisible to the naked eye. You could shake the box, flip it over, and never know it was there. I told myself it was just a flourish, a signature. But as I glued the velvet lining into the false bottom, I knew it was more than that. It was a delivery system. I needed to say something. I had spent 92 days in silence. I had let them rewrite the narrative. I had let them tell themselves that I was just being dramatic, that I was on a break, that I was fine. I couldn't scream at them. Screaming is messy. Screaming gets you labeled as crazy. But a letter? A letter found years later? Or a letter found on the wedding night? That is a different kind of weapon. I sat down at my workbench. I took a piece of thick, cream-colored cardstock. I picked up my fountain pen. I didn't want to rant. I didn't want to list my grievances like a petulant child. The time for seeking their validation was over. I wrote the date, April 18th, the day of the wedding. I started writing, to the Bennett family. You asked for something that feels like real family. I built this box with the same hands that used to fix the fence in the backyard while you watched TV. I built it with the same hands that carried the groceries you didn't say thank you for. I built it with the same hands you erased from the picture. You paid for this box. Mom, you paid $850. You paid it without blinking. Do you remember when I needed $400 for my car repair so I could get to work? And you told me I needed to learn fiscal responsibility? I remember. Blake, you asked for roots. The roots of this family are not deep. They are shallow and they are tangled. They are built on the convenience of silence. You are marrying into a house of mirrors. I am not missing. I am just no longer available to be the background noise for your main event. Enjoy the table. It is solid oak. It will last longer than the lies. Natalie, I read it over. It was sharp. It was cold. It was accurate. I folded the paper. I didn't put it in the box yet. I held it in my hand. This was the power. I had the ability to blow up their piece whenever I wanted. I could slip this into the compartment, and maybe they would find it in a week. Maybe they would find it in 10 years. Maybe they would never find it. And it would sit there, a silent truth right under their fingertips, vibrating with potential energy. I looked at the box. It was beautiful. It was the best thing I had ever made. I slid the false bottom open. It moved on the silent, well-oiled rails I had installed. I placed the letter inside. I slid it shut. Click. It was invisible. I wrapped the box in brown paper. I packaged the table in protective foam. I printed the shipping label. Deliver to the Harbor View at Seabrook Cove. Attention, Blake Harrison. I felt a strange sense of calm. I wasn't just delivering furniture. I was delivering a time bomb. And the best part was, I didn't have to be there when it went off. I just had to make sure the timer was set. I loaded the truck. It was time to get back to work. I had a wedding to crash. But not in the way they expected. I was going to be there in every grain of wood they touched. The transformation of Hollow Pine Studio from a desperate idea into a legal fortress was the first move in a game I was finally playing to win. I did not want to be a freelancer with a side hustle. I wanted to be an institution. I hired a certified public accountant named David, a man with thick glasses and zero interest in my personal life, to structure the business. We filed the articles of organization. We obtained an employer identification number. We set up a business bank account that was completely separate from the personal accounts my parents had access to or knowledge of. You want to keep the books impeccable, David told me, tapping his pen on a ledger. If you ever get audited, or if anyone ever tries to claim your assets are commingled, you want a firewall. I want a moat, I corrected him. With alligators, David chuckled. Thinking I was speaking metaphorically about liability, I was speaking literally about my mother. Once the legal shield was in place, I turned to the narrative. I had been silent for 92 days. Silence is safe, but silence also allows others to fill the void with their own convenient lies. They were telling people I was busy. They were telling people I was finding myself. It was time to tell the truth, but not the messy, screaming truth. I wanted the artistic truth. I started a blog on the Hollow Pine website. It was minimalist, just black text on a cream background. I wrote my first entry late one Tuesday night, the same night the family usually gathered for taco night, a tradition I was now permanently excused from. I titled the post, "The Piece No One Asked For." I wrote about wood, ostensibly. I wrote about a chair that sits in a hallway, collecting dust, holding the coats of guests, supporting the weight of people who never look at it. We assume the furniture is happy just to be in the house. I wrote, "We assume that because it does not speak, it does not feel the weight. But wood has a memory. It expands with the heat of an argument and contracts in the cold silence of neglect. Eventually, if you treat a piece of oak like it is disposable plastic, it will crack. And when it cracks, it does not ask for glue. It asks to be moved to a different room." I did not use names. I did not say Mom or Dad or Kelsey. I did not need to. The emotion was woven into the description of the grain. It was a ghost story disguised as a restoration diary. I hit publish. Then, I made the next move. Maya had a friend named Chloe who worked as a freelance publicist for local artists. Chloe owed Maya a favor for a logo design, and Maya called it in. "We need a feature," I told Chloe over coffee. "I need it to drop exactly 24 hours before the wedding." "Why the specific timing?" Chloe asked, scrolling through my Instagram feed. "Because," I said, taking a sip of black coffee, "people read the news on their phones while they are getting their hair and makeup done. They read it when they are waiting for the rehearsal dinner to start. I want to be the notification that pops up while they are toasting the happy couple." Chloe pitched the story to a popular local lifestyle blog, the Coastal Chronicle. It was the kind of site my mother refreshed 5 times a day to see who was wearing what and which restaurant had the best brunch. The angle was perfect. Local maker turns absence into craft. The journalist came to the studio. She took photos of my hands covered in walnut dust. She took photos of the tools, and, most importantly, she took a high-resolution photo of the commission, the table. The guest book table I had built for Blake. It was finished. It was magnificent. The walnut was dark and swirling, polished to a mirror shine. The legs were tapered and elegant, and sitting on top of it was the keepsake box, closed and mysterious. The article went live on April 17th at 8 in the morning. I sat in my car, parked 3 blocks away from the venue, and watched the view count tick up on my phone. The headline was bold, "From the shadows to the spotlight. How Hollow Pine Studio is redefining local artistry." The article did not mention my family by name. It talked about a woman who had stepped away from a traditional path to find solace in creation. It quoted me saying, "Sometimes you have to leave a house to build a home." But the picture was the checkmate. There, in full color, was the table that would be sitting in the lobby of the Harbor View the next day. The caption read, "A custom walnut guestbook station commissioned for a private event in Seabrook Cove." I knew my mother would see it. She followed the Coastal Chronicle. I imagined the scene. She would be sitting in her kitchen, perhaps drinking her morning tea, trying to calm her nerves before the rehearsal. She would scroll past the ads. She would see the headline. She might even click on it because she liked local artistry, and then she would see the table. She would recognize the style. She would see the name, Hollow Pine. She would remember the receipt she had paid. And then she would see my face. There was one photo of me, in profile, wearing a mask, sanding a board. It was obscure, but it was undeniably me, the curve of the jaw, the way I held the tool. She would know, and she would not be able to say a single word. She could not turn to Kelsey and say, "Oh, look, your sister is the one who built the table for your wedding." That would require admitting that they had hired me blindly. That would require admitting they didn't know what I did for a living anymore. That would require admitting that the stranger they paid was their own blood. So she would swallow it. She would have to carry that knowledge. Heavy and sharp, all through the wedding, every time a guest complimented the table, every time someone signed the book, my mother would feel a little prick of shame. That was the goal, not a scene. Just a constant, low-level frequency of discomfort. But I wasn't done. I had the box, the keepsake box with the false bottom. I had the table and the box loaded in the back of my rented delivery van. I was scheduled to drop them off at the venue in 2 hours. I sat in the driver's seat and pulled out the envelope I had prepared. It was a thick cream-colored envelope. On the front, I had written in calligraphy, "Open after the reception." I had debated what to put inside. I could have put the police report for the identity theft. I could have put a printout of the text messages where they ignored me. I could have put a bill for emotional damages. but those were acts of war. And war implies that I cared enough to fight. I didn't want to fight. I wanted to haunt. I pulled out the letter I had written. I read it one last time to ensure the tone was perfect. To the bride and groom. They say that wood has a memory. It remembers the drought, the fire, and the storm. It records everything in its rings. Even if you paint over it. There was a person who lived in your house for 32 years. She walked the halls. She fixed the leaks. She bought the groceries. And then, one day, she disappeared. For 92 days. The house was silent. No one called. No one searched. The only time her name was spoken was when a signature was needed. I am not writing this to ruin your day. I am writing this to ensure you cannot ruin your own future. Do not build a marriage on the kind of silence that filled that house. Do not let convenient be the word that defines your love. If you are reading this, you are touching something I made. I am here. I have always been here. You just chose not to see me. This table is a gift, not from a vendor, but from the ghost in the hallway. It was unsigned, but I needed a signature, not a name, but a proof that I knew them better than they knew themselves, a proof that I was not a stranger they could dismiss. I took my pen and added a postscript. It was a single line, a memory that only 3 people in the world shared. P.S. Crunchy cinnamon toast at 2 a.m. I stared at the words. When I was 7 years old, I used to have terrible nightmares. I would wake up screaming, convinced there were monsters under the bed. My father would sleep through it, but my mother, the version of my mother before she became the manager of the family, would come in. She wouldn't just tuck me back in. She would take me downstairs to the kitchen. She would put 2 slices of bread in the toaster. She would slather them with butter and sprinkle a mountain of cinnamon and sugar on top. We would sit on the counter, swinging our legs, eating crunchy cinnamon toast in the dark at 2 a.m. It was our secret. It was the only time she was just mine. Kelsey didn't know about the toast. Dad didn't know. Just me and Mom. By including that line, I was twisting a knife. I was telling her, I remember the love you used to have for me. I remember when you were a mother, not just a critic. And I know you remember it too. It was devastating because it was tender. I slipped the letter into the envelope. I sealed it with wax, a pretension, maybe, but fitting for a wedding. I climbed into the back of the van. I opened the keepsake box. I pressed the hidden latch under the decorative trim. The false bottom slid open with a soft shh sound. I placed the envelope inside. I slid the panel back. It clicked into place. The box looked empty. It looked innocent. Just a beautiful wooden container waiting for well wishes. But inside, it held the weight of 32 years. I closed the lid of the box. I checked my watch. It was time. I started the engine. The drive to Seabrook Cove was 40 minutes. I wasn't driving to a wedding. I was driving to a crime scene where the body had already been removed. And I was returning the evidence. I felt a strange sense of calm. This was not the frenetic energy of the day I left. This was the cool, hydraulic power of a press. I was going to walk into that venue. I was going to shake Blake's hand. I was going to see my mother from a distance. And I was going to leave my name right in the center of their room, hidden in plain sight. They wanted a centerpiece? I was bringing them the truth. And the truth is the heaviest thing in the room. I pulled out of the parking spot and merged into traffic. The radio was playing a pop song about heartbreak, but I turned it off. I preferred the sound of the tires on the pavement. It sounded like progress. Tomorrow, they would have their party. Tomorrow, they would have their cake and their dances and their speeches about eternal love. But tonight, they would read the article, and after the reception, when the lights were down and the guests were gone, they would open the box, and for the first time in 92 days, they would not be able to look away. The rental truck was a white, boxy thing that smelled of stale coffee and industrial vinyl. I drove it with the window down, letting the salt air of Seabrook Cove sting my eyes. It was 2 p.m. on Friday, the day before the wedding. The sky was an aggressive, cloudless blue, the kind of weather people pay thousands of dollars to secure. I was not wearing a dress. I was not wearing the pastel bridesmaid gown I likely would have been forced into had I remained the compliant daughter. I was wearing matte black work boots, black cargo pants, and a plain black t-shirt. My hair was pulled back in a severe functional bun. I looked exactly like what I was. A vendor, a service provider, someone paid to be invisible. I pulled up to the service entrance of the Harbor View. It was a massive, sprawling estate with white columns and manicured hedges that looked like they had been cut with laser precision. I parked between a florist's van and a catering truck. I checked my reflection in the side mirror. My face was pale, but my eyes were steady. I did not look like Natalie Bennett, the daughter who cried because she wasn't invited to dinner. I looked like N. Bennett, the owner of Hollow Pine Studio. I clipped my vendor badge to my shirt. It read, Hollow Pine Studio. Access. All areas. I walked to the back of the truck and rolled up the door. The table was strapped down, wrapped in protective blankets. The keepsake box sat in a crate next to it. Need a hand with that? I turned. A young guy in a valet uniform was watching me. Yes, I said. I have a delivery for the groom, Blake Harrison. Oh, the big guy, the valet laughed. He is inside stressing about the lighting. Let me grab a dolly. We loaded the table. It was heavy. Solid walnut always is. We rolled it through the service corridors, past the kitchens where chefs were shouting about canapes, and into the main ballroom. The room was breathtaking, in a sterile, expensive way. Floor-to-ceiling windows looked out over the ocean. Crystal chandeliers hung like frozen waterfalls. And there, in the center of the room, standing amidst a cluster of florists and lighting technicians, was Blake. He looked anxious. He was pointing at a spot near the entrance. "Blake?" I called out. My voice was level, professional. He turned. His face lit up. It was the expression of a man who had been waiting for a lifeboat. "You made it!" he exclaimed, jogging over. He did not recognize me. Why would he? He had seen me 3 times in 2 years, usually in the background of a chaotic holiday dinner, wearing a sweater and looking at the floor. He was looking for a carpenter, not a sister-in-law. "And Bennett?" he asked, extending a hand. "That is me," I said, shaking his hand firmly. My grip was stronger than his. "Here is the table." I signaled the valet to pull the blanket off. The heavy wool slid away, revealing the wood. The walnut gleamed under the chandeliers. The grain swirled in deep, chocolate rivers, interrupted by the lighter. Honey-colored knots I had carefully preserved. It was dark, moody, and impossibly solid. Blake actually stopped breathing for a second. "Oh my God," he whispered. He ran a hand along the edge. It is incredible. It looks ancient. It is designed to last," I said. "And here's the box." I handed him the heavy wooden box. He took it, testing the weight. "This is exactly what I wanted," Blake said, his voice thick with emotion. "Kelsey is going to lose her mind. She wanted something with history. This feels like it has been in the family for 50 years. "It has a story," I said simply. "Honey, look," Blake shouted, turning toward the stage. "The maker is here. Come look at this." I stood still. I clasped my hands behind my back. I waited. On the stage, a woman was arguing with a lighting tech about the shade of amber in the gels. She turned around. It was Kelsey. She was wearing a white silk jumpsuit, looking every inch the bride-to-be. Her hair was perfectly blown out. She looked radiant and stressed. She looked down from the stage and saw Blake. Then her eyes slid to the table. She blinked, clearly impressed. Then her eyes moved to the person standing next to the table. She froze. It was not a dramatic gasp. It was a total system failure. Her mouth opened slightly, but no sound came out. She stood there, one hand raised to point at a light, frozen in mid-gesture like a statue. Behind her, coming out from the bridal suite, was my mother. She was holding a clipboard. She was saying something about the seating chart. "We need to make sure the Aunt Glenda table is not too close to the DJ because—" She looked up. She followed Kelsey's gaze. The color drained from her face so fast, it looked like a special effect. Her skin turned the color of old parchment. She stopped walking. Her clipboard clattered to the floor. The sound echoed in the massive, empty room like a gunshot. My father was the last to emerge. He walked out, smiling, holding a glass of scotch. He saw them frozen. He looked at me. His smile did not fade instantly. It curdled. It turned into a grimace of confusion, then recognition, then absolute horror. I did not move. I did not wave. I stood next to my creation, dressed in black, looking like the reaper who had come to collect a debt. Blake, oblivious to the silence that was suffocating his future in-laws, turned back to me. "Kelsey," he yelled again, waving. "Come meet her. This is Bennett, the one I told you about." Kelsey walked down the stairs. She did not walk like a bride. She walked like someone moving underwater. She approached the group. Her eyes locked on my face. Blake looked between us, sensing the tension but misinterpreting it. "She is the local maker," Blake explained, beaming at me. "And Bennett, Natalie, right?" He said the name, Natalie. The sound of it bounced off the marble floors and the crystal chandeliers. For 92 days, they had avoided saying that name. They had treated it like a curse word. Now, the groom was shouting it in the middle of their perfect venue. "Natalie?" Blake repeated, looking at my mother. "Wait, why do you guys look so weird?" He looked at me. Then he looked at Kelsey, then back to me. The realization hit him. It was slow and painful to watch. His eyes widened. He looked at the family resemblance. The same nose, the same chin, that he had never bothered to notice before because I was so inconsequential. "Wait," Blake said, his voice dropping. "You are that Natalie?" I looked him in the eye. "Hello, Blake?" I said. "I am the vendor." Kelsey finally found her voice. It was a squeak. You made this?" She pointed a trembling finger at the table. "Yes," I said. "Walnut, custom order, invoice number 004, paid in full by Martha Bennett." I looked at my mother. She was trembling. She looked small. The powerful matriarch who controlled the family narrative was gone, replaced by a terrified woman who knew she had been caught. "Natalie," Mom whispered. It was a plea. "What are you doing here?" "I am delivering a product," I said. My voice was cool, detached. "The contract stated delivery by 2 in the afternoon on Friday. I am 5 minutes early." "You own Hollow Pine?" Kelsey asked. She sounded breathless, as if the air in the room had been replaced with helium. "I do," I said. My father stepped forward. He put on his negotiator face, the one he used when he was trying to get out of a speeding ticket. "Now, Natalie," he said, forcing a laugh that sounded like gravel in a blender. "This is quite a surprise. We didn't know you were into carpentry." "There is a lot you do not know," I said. I did not smile back. "I suggest you check the inventory. I need a signature of receipt." I pulled a tablet out of my bag. I held it out to Blake. "If you are satisfied with the craftsmanship, please sign here." Blake looked at the tablet. He looked at the table. He looked at his fiancée, who looked like she was about to vomit. Blake stammered. "It is beautiful, but why didn't you tell me?" "You asked for a local maker," I said. "You asked for roots. I gave you exactly what you ordered." He took the stylus. His hand was shaking. He signed his name. "Thank you," I said. I took the tablet back. Then I turned to the box. I placed my hand on the lid. "One last thing," I said, addressing Blake but looking directly at my mother. "This box has a specific feature." I pressed the hidden latch. I demonstrated how the false bottom slid open. It was smooth, silent, and precise. "It is a secret compartment," I said, "for things you want to keep hidden, or things you want to be found later." I slid it shut. Click. "I recommend you do not open the note inside until after the reception," I said. "It is a private sentiment." "Natalie," Mom said, taking a step forward. Her voice was sharp now, panic edging into anger. "What did you put in there?" I looked at her. I saw the fear in her eyes. She thought it was the fraud report. She thought it was a lawsuit. She thought I was going to burn the wedding down. "Just a memory," I said. "Something about toast." She flinched as if I had slapped her. Her hand went to her mouth. Tears welled up in her eyes instantly. Not fake tears, but real. Shock tears. She remembered. "I have to go," I said. "I have another delivery." "Wait," Kelsey said. She reached out, as if to grab my arm, but stopped inches from my black t-shirt. "You can't just leave. Are you coming tomorrow?" I looked at her white jumpsuit. I looked at the table I had built. "I was not invited, Kelsey," I said. "And I do not crash parties. I just supply them." I turned around. "Natalie," Dad called out. "For God's sake, stop acting like this." I kept walking. My boots made a solid, rhythmic sound on the floor. Click, click, click. I walked past the florists who were staring. I walked past the lighting guys who were whispering. I reached the double doors of the ballroom. Just outside, at the vendor check-in table, a woman was arguing with the coordinator about a missing name tag. She turned as I pushed the doors open. It was Aunt Glenda, the one who had posted the Minion meme. She saw me. She saw the badge on my chest. Hollow Pine Studio. Her eyes went wide. She looked at the tablet in my hand. She looked at the article she had likely read on the Coastal Chronicle that morning, the one about the local maker. "Natalie?" she gasped. "Wait, you are the woodworker? You are the one everyone is talking about?" I paused for 1 second. "Hello, Aunt Glenda," I said. "Enjoy the wedding." I pushed past her and walked out into the bright, blinding sunlight. I did not run to the truck. I walked. I unlocked the door, climbed into the cab, and started the engine. I checked the rearview mirror. No one had followed me. They were still inside, standing around that table, terrified of a wooden box. I put the truck in gear and drove away. I left them with the most dangerous thing I could possibly give them: the truth. Sitting right in the center of their room, waiting to be opened. 3 days after the wedding, the silence broke. It did not break with a bang, but with the vibrating buzz of my phone on the workbench. I was in the studio, applying a second coat of linseed oil to a coffee table I had restored. The smell of the oil was sharp and clean. I looked at the screen. The name flashing was Kelsey. I let it ring 3 times. I wiped my hands on a rag, took a slow breath, and picked up. "Hello," I said. "You did it on purpose," Kelsey said. Her voice was not the melodic, charming voice she used for her Instagram stories. It was thin, jagged, and trembling with exhaustion. "You came there on purpose to ruin my day." "I came there to deliver a table," I said, putting the phone on speaker and setting it down on the bench so I could keep working. "Blake ordered a table. I delivered a table. That is how a transaction works." "You made it weird," she shouted. "Everyone was asking about you. Aunt Glenda told Cousin Mike that you are some kind of famous artist now. And Mike asked Dad why you were not at the head table, and Dad had to lie and say you had a contagious flu. You made Dad lie." I dipped the rag into the oil can. "I did not make Dad do anything. Dad lied because the truth was too embarrassing for him to admit. That is a management issue, Kelsey, not a manufacturing issue." "Blake is asking questions," she whispered, the anger dissolving into panic. "He read the letter. He keeps reading it. He asked me why I never talk about you. He asked me why I told him you were traveling when you were living 3 hours away." "And what did you tell him?" "I told him you are difficult," she snapped. "I told him you have episodes. I told him we give you space because you are unstable." I stopped rubbing the wood. The accusation hung in the air, heavy and familiar. Unstable. That was their favorite word. It was the rug they swept everything under. "The table is stable, Kelsey," I said calmly. "The joinery is perfect. The finish is flawless. Unstable people do not build things that last for 100 years. Blake knows quality when he touches it. If you keep lying to him, he is going to start wondering which one of us is actually the unstable one. Just fix it," she begged. Call him. Tell him you are being dramatic. Tell him we are close. Please, we are supposed to go to Bora Bora tomorrow. I do not want him looking at me like I am a stranger. I am just a vendor. Kelsey, I said, I do not offer customer support for your marriage. I hung up. The second wave hit 4 hours later. This time, it was my mother. She did not shout. My mother does not shout. She uses a tone that is somewhere between disappointment and martyrdom, a frequency designed to trigger a guilt response in my brainstem. Natalie, she said, I hope you are satisfied. I am, I said. The client signed off on the delivery. The invoice is paid. It was a successful job. You know that is not what I mean, she said, her voice dropping to a hiss. You embarrassed us. You walked in there looking like a mechanic. I am a mechanic, I said. I fix broken things, or I build new ones. Was this revenge? She asked. Is that what this is? You wanted to punish us because we missed a few phone calls? I laughed. It was a short, dry sound. Missed a few phone calls? I repeated. Mom, I was gone for 92 days, 3 months, a quarter of a year. You did not miss a phone call. You missed a daughter. We were busy, she protested. The wedding planning was consuming everything. You know how stressed I get. We thought you were fine. We thought you needed space. You thought I was convenient, I said. And when I stopped being convenient, you erased me. And then, when you needed a signature, you remembered me. What did you tell Blake? She demanded. He is looking through the binder. He is asking about the budget. My stomach tightened. Not with fear, but with anticipation. The binder, the famous wedding binder where Mom kept every contract, every receipt, every detail. I told him nothing, I said. I gave him a box. What he finds in his own house is up to him. If you ruin this for your sister, she said, her voice trembling with a mix of threat and terror, I will never forgive you. You already forgot me. Mom, I said. Forgiveness implies you remember I exist. I ended the call. The fallout was not happening in my studio. It was happening in the house with the white shutters. I could feel the vibrations of it across the miles. The next day, I received a notification from the credit card company. The investigation I had initiated was moving forward. Status update. Merchant contacted. Provisional credit issued. I knew what that meant. The bank had contacted Vintage Furniture Rentals. They had flagged the $2,500 charge as fraudulent. The rental company, not wanting to lose the money or be involved in a crime, would have immediately contacted the client on file. That client was my mother. I could imagine the scene. Mom, sitting at her kitchen island, answering the phone, expecting a well-wisher to congratulate her on the wedding. Instead, it is a billing manager asking why the cardholder, Natalie Bennett, is disputing the charge for the gold Chiavari chairs. Mom would have tried to bluff. She would have said it was a mistake. She would have said her daughter authorized it. But the bank requires proof. They require a signed authorization form. And the signature on file was the one I had flagged as a forgery. The system was working. It was a cold, unfeeling machine. And for the first time, it was on my side. Then came the twist I had not engineered, but inevitable physics had delivered. Blake called me. It was Tuesday evening. I was sitting on my balcony, drinking tea, watching the sun go down over the industrial roofs of Lakewood Junction. Natalie? His voice sounded different. It wasn't the cheerful groom anymore. It was the voice of a man who had been peeling back wallpaper and found black mold underneath. Hi. Blake, I said. I need to ask you something, he said. And I need you to tell me the truth. Kelsey is crying in the bathroom and she won't make sense. Ask, I said. I was organizing the vendor payments, he said. I wanted to send thank you notes. I found a file for the venue deposit, the Harbor View. I waited. The receipt lists the cardholder as you, he said. Natalie Bennett, but I know for a fact that your parents said they were paying for the venue as their gift to us. Kelsey made a big deal about how generous they were being. He paused. waiting for me to fill the silence. I did not. And then, he continued, his voice getting tighter, I found another statement. For the catering, again, your name, but the address is your parents' house. And I saw the application for the card. It was dated December. Kelsey told me you were in Europe in December. I was not in Europe, I said. I was in a warehouse in Lakewood Junction, loading pallets of televisions for $15 an hour. $15 an hour, he repeated. It was a statement of shock. But there is $20,000 of debt on this card. I know, I said. I found out about it when I tried to rent an apartment and was told my credit score had tanked. Did you authorize it? Blake asked. Did you tell them they could use your name? No, I said. I did not. I heard him exhale. It was a long, shaky breath. Kelsey said, she just told me that Mom handles the money. She said Mom told her to sign the papers. She said she didn't look at what she was signing. She said she just does what Mom says because it is easier than fighting. The golden child had cracked. Faced with the undeniable reality of a paper trail, Kelsey had done what she always did. She shifted the blame. She sacrificed the general to save the soldier. She threw Mom to the wolves. That sounds accurate, I said. Kelsey has never had to read the fine print. This is fraud, Blake said. He sounded horrified. Our wedding, was paid for with stolen money? From her own sister? It seems that way, I said. Why didn't you call the police? He asked. Why didn't you stop the wedding? Because I didn't want to be the one who burned it down, I said. I wanted you to see the smoke yourself. If I had called the police, I would have been the crazy, vindictive sister. You would have hated me. You would have believed them. I would have, he admitted quietly. God, I would have. Now you have the documents, I said. You have the letter, and you have the table. You can decide what is real. The table, he said. His voice cracked. I looked at the box. I opened the compartment. I read the note about the toast. That was for her, I said. Not for you. I asked her about it, Blake said. I asked her what the cinnamon toast meant. She didn't know. She thought it was a code. She had no idea what I was talking about. She wouldn't, I said. It wasn't her memory. She didn't know, he repeated. But your mom. I saw your mom reading the note yesterday. She was crying. I thought she was touched. Now I realize. She was guilty. Blake, I said. I am sorry your wedding is tainted. I really am. I did not want to hurt you, but I could not let them carry my name into your marriage without my permission. I have to go, he said. I have to. I don't know what I have to do. Good luck, I said. The next morning, I sent the email. It was addressed to my mother, my father, and Kelsey. I did not copy Blake. This was internal business. Subject: regarding the outstanding accounts to the Bennett family. By now, you are likely aware that the credit card ending in 4498 has been frozen. I have formally disputed all charges with the fraud department. The bank has requested a police report to discharge the debt from my name. I have not filed one yet. However, the fraud investigation is automatic. The bank will contact the merchants. The merchants will contact you. I am not asking for an apology. I am not asking for a reunion. I am informing you of the logistical reality. I have secured legal counsel regarding the identity theft. I am not interested in emotional negotiations. Do not call me to cry. Do not call me to guilt trip. If you want to resolve this, you will resolve it on paper. Natalie Bennett, owner. Hollow Pine Studio. I hit send. I sat back in my chair. I looked around my apartment. It was small. It was rented. The furniture was mismatched. But I had restored every piece with my own hands. It was peaceful. The response came 2 hours later. It was not an email. It was a text from my father. We need to meet. Not at the house. There is a diner on Route 9, halfway between you and us. Tomorrow at noon. We want to settle this, quietly. I looked at the words. Settle this, not fix this, not heal this. Settle, like a lawsuit, like a business deal gone wrong. They were scared. They weren't scared of losing me. They had already lost me. They were scared of the law. They were scared of the neighbors finding out. They were scared that their shiny, perfect reputation was about to be stained with the ink of a criminal record. I typed back, "I will be there. I am bringing my accountant." I didn't actually need my accountant, but it was a power move. It signaled that this was not a family lunch. This was a deposition. I stood up and walked to the closet. I pulled out my clothes for tomorrow. I didn't choose the soft sweaters I used to wear to make myself look harmless. I didn't choose the black work clothes of the vendor. I chose a navy blue blazer, a crisp white shirt, tailored trousers. I was going to walk into that diner not as their daughter, but as the plaintiff. The silence was over. The explosion hadn't happened at the wedding. It was happening now, in the slow, crushing pressure of consequences. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't the one being crushed. The diner on Route 9 was a neutral zone, a place of chrome and vinyl that belonged to no one. It sat exactly halfway between the life I had built in Lakewood Junction and the house I had escaped. I arrived 20 minutes early. I ordered a black coffee and sat in a booth near the window, my back straight, my hands folded on the table. I was not there to eat. I was there to close a ledger. I watched their car pull into the parking lot. It was my father's sedan, polished and gleaming. They emerged like a delegation from a foreign country. My father in his driving cap, my mother in a beige cardigan, and Kelsey in sunglasses that were too big for the cloudy day. They walked toward the entrance with a hesitation I had never seen in them before. They were used to walking into rooms they owned. Today, they were walking into a room where they were the defendants. They slid into the booth opposite me. Kelsey sat on the outside, looking like she wanted to bolt. My mother sat in the middle, clutching her purse. My father sat near the window, refusing to make eye contact. "Hello?" I said. "Natalie?" My mother started, her voice trembling with that familiar mix of injury and accusation. "You look different." "I am different," I said. "I am solvent." The waitress came over. My father waved her away without looking up. "Just water." The silence that followed was thick enough to choke on. My mother broke it first, as I knew she would. She reached across the table, her hand hovering near mine, but not landing. "Natalie, we didn't mean for it to get this far," she said. Her eyes were wide and wet. "We didn't mean to hurt you. It was just a misunderstanding. We were overwhelmed with the wedding, and the finances got a little tight, and we thought, since you weren't using your credit—" "Since I wasn't using my identity," I corrected her. "You thought you would borrow it." "We were going to pay it back," my father snapped, finally looking at me. His face was flushed. "You make it sound like we are criminals. We are your parents. We raised you. We fed you. And now you are threatening us with legal action over a few $1,000s?" $20,000, I said. "And it is not about the money, Dad. It is about the fact that I disappeared for 92 days. And the only time you thought of me was when you needed a co-signer. That is not true." My mother cried. "We missed you. We were just giving you space. You are always so sensitive, Natalie. You take everything so personally." "I take identity theft personally," I said. "Yes. You are being dramatic," my father grunted. "Just like always, trying to make a scene." I did not raise my voice. I did not cry. I reached into my bag and pulled out a manila folder. I placed it on the table. I opened it. Inside were 3 documents. The first was the credit report, with the fraudulent account highlighted in yellow. The second was the affidavit of forgery from the bank, blank and waiting for a signature. The third was a printout of the fraud investigation letter, stating that the bank was preparing to refer the case to law enforcement if the account holder did not accept liability. "This is not drama," I said, sliding the papers toward them. "This is documentation. I have already filed the initial dispute. The bank has flagged the charges. They know the signature is forged. They know the IP address on the application came from your house." I looked at Kelsey. She was staring at the table. picking at her cuticle. "The bank requires a responsible party," I said. "If I continue with the fraud claim, the investigation will lead to whoever signed that application. It will lead to whoever used the card at the venue. That means you, Mom, or you, Kelsey." Kelsey flinched. "I do not want to send my mother to jail," I said, "and I do not want to ruin my sister's honeymoon, but I will not pay this debt, and I will not have a bankruptcy on my record because you wanted better centerpieces." "So what do you want?" my father asked, his voice low and defeated. "I want you to fix it," I said. "I want you to sign this affidavit admitting that the account was opened in error by a family member who had access to my information. You will accept full liability for the debt. You will transfer the balance to your own cards or pay it off immediately, and you will close the account." "If we sign that," my mother whispered, "the bank will ban us, our credit." "Your credit is not my problem," I said. "My credit is my problem." "We can't pay $20,000 right now," my father said. "The wedding, it cost a fortune. Then sell the boat," I said. "Or sell the second car. Or maybe return the table I built. I can sell it to someone else for $3,000. That is a start." My mother looked at me with horror. "You would sell the gift?" "It wasn't a gift," I said. "It was a purchase made with stolen money. It is evidence." The waitress walked by, sensing the tension, and gave our table a wide berth. "Natalie," my mother pleaded, "can't we just work this out as a family? You pay it for now, and we will pay you back monthly. We can write a contract, a family contract." I looked at her. I looked at the woman who had made me cinnamon toast at 2 a.m. I looked at the woman who had laughed in the hallway about wishing I didn't exist. "No," I said. "Why are you being so cruel?" she asked. "I am not being cruel," I said. "I am being a separate entity. I am setting a boundary. A family contract means nothing to people who don't treat me like family." "We do treat you like family," my father shouted. "We love you." "Then why didn't you call?" I asked the question again. Simple, quiet. "Why didn't you call on day 30? Why didn't you call on day 60? Why did you only email me on day 92 to ask if I was free to move boxes?" They had no answer. The silence stretched, and then a small voice broke it. "Because it was easier," Kelsey said. We all looked at her. She was still looking at her hands. "Kelsey, be quiet," my mother hissed. "No," Kelsey said. She looked up. Her eyes were red behind her sunglasses. She took them off. "It is true. It was easier without her. When Natalie is there, you guys feel guilty. You know you treat her worse than me, but you don't want to admit it. So when she is there, the air is heavy. When she left, the guilt left too. We didn't call her because we liked not feeling bad about ourselves." My parents stared at her. My father's mouth opened, but no sound came out. My mother looked like she had been slapped. It was the first honest thing anyone had said in that family for 20 years. "I knew," Kelsey continued, looking at me. "I always knew. I knew I was the golden child. I knew you were the scapegoat, and I let it happen because I liked being the favorite. I didn't want to lose my spot. If I defended you, maybe they would start picking on me. I was a coward." She started to cry. Ugly, messy tears. "I am sorry, Nat," she sobbed. "I am so sorry." I looked at my sister. For the first time, I didn't see the perfect princess. I saw a terrified girl who had been playing a role just as hard as I had. She was trapped in the same play, just with a better costume. "Thank you," I said, "for saying it." I pushed the pen toward my father. "Sign the paper," I said. "Transfer the debt, clear my name, and then we are done." My father looked at the pen. He looked at my mother. He looked at Kelsey, who was weeping into a napkin. He realized then that the game was over. The illusion of the happy family was shattered. He couldn't bully me into submission, and he couldn't charm me into silence. He picked up the pen. His hand shook, but he signed. He pushed the paper back to me. "Are you happy?" he asked bitterly. "No," I said. "I am safe." I took the folder. I put it back in my bag. I stood up. My mother reached out and grabbed my wrist. Her grip was desperate. "Natalie," she said, "does this mean, are we over? Are you never coming home?" I looked at her hand on my arm. I didn't pull away violently. I just gently disengaged her fingers, one by one. "I don't have a home there anymore. Mom," I said, "I have an apartment in Lakewood Junction. I have a business. I have a life." "But we are your parents," she whispered. "I know," I said, "and I don't hate you. Hate takes too much energy. I can't afford you. You cost too much. You cost me my self-esteem. You cost me my voice. And you almost cost me my credit score." I stepped back. "I hope the honeymoon is nice. Kelsey," I said, "send me a postcard, but don't expect me to pay for the postage." I walked out of the diner. I didn't look back. I got into my car, and I drove. I didn't drive fast. I drove steady. 6 months later, the sign on the door read, "Hollow Pine Studio" in gold lettering. It was a real shop now, a storefront with a workshop in the back. The smell of sawdust and coffee filled the air. I had an assistant, a 19-year-old kid named Leo, who reminded me of myself, quiet, eager, talented. I was teaching him how to cut dovetails. "Easy on the pressure," I told him. "Let the chisel do the work." He nodded, focused. I walked to the front counter to check the mail. There were bills, flyers, and a small envelope with a Seabrook Cove postmark. I opened it. It was a card. On the front was a picture of a sunset. Inside, there was no long apology, no begging, just a short note in Blake's handwriting. "Natalie, we kept the table. It sits in our hallway. Every time I put my keys on it, I remember that things need to be solid to last. Kelsey is seeing a therapist. We are working on being real. Thank you for the box. And thank you for the truth. It hurt like hell. But it woke us up. I am glad you exist. Blake." I read the last line again. "I am glad you exist." I put the card down on the counter. I looked at my reflection in the shop window. I saw a woman in a canvas apron, with sawdust in her hair and strong hands. I didn't see the ghost in the hallway anymore. I didn't see the girl who disappeared. I saw Natalie Bennett, and she was right where she was supposed to be. "Hey, Nat," Leo called from the back. "I think I got it. The joint holds." I smiled. "Coming," I said. I walked back into the workshop, leaving the door open to let the fresh air in. Thank you so much for listening to this story. It has been a journey of finding a voice in the silence, and I hope it resonated with you. Where are you listening from? Are you in your workshop, on your commute, or maybe having a late-night snack? Let me know in the comments below. I would love to hear your thoughts, and if you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to the Lucy Revenge Stories channel, like this video, and hit like and subscribe so this story can be heard by even more people.